There we go. So, we got decent amount of planes that I've already got like listed out here. I got them with their names on them, so they're a little bit easier to tell. And here's how I'm gonna be ranking them. So, at the top we got the best gobos, the cream of the crop gobos at the top, right? Perfect. Love the interpretation of goblins. Chef's kiss. Right below that, we got almost perfect gobos. These ones, the ones in this tier, are going to be goblins that I think are... There's really only like one, maybe two things that are just like hanging me up on like that plane's goblins, to where I'm like, almost, but not quite. You got solid gobos, perfectly good. Like, solid gobos, pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Below that, you got perfectly average gobos. These ones are like, it's a goblin? Like, you know, nothing special, nothing terrible either. You know, average. And then down here, this is reserved for a couple that not a big fan of. They're on thin ice for being goblins. I'll go ahead and tell you, there's not... I think there's only going to be one or two down here, but man, Magic did goblins dirty with these interpretations that are going to end up down here. But yeah, so most painful one, yeah, these ones are just they're goblins, I guess, you know, all right. But yeah, so I got them in order of how I ended up taking notes, because I went through, I made notes for each plane of like their appearances, what they, you know, their behavior in them, a little bit of history about the goblins. So I have a good amount to talk about. And I got them in order of just how I ended up getting their notes, or my notes written down about them. Some of the planes, like you can see, like Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, or like Mirrodin Old and New, Zendikar Old and New. Some of the planes are going to be weird because there is something that happens that causes a drastic difference in appearance and behavior. So the ones where it's like a real big change, I did separate, like Lorwyn, Shadowmoor, Mirrodin Old and New, Zendikar Old and New. Hey robot, welcome in. But yeah, and then there are gonna be some other ones like Dominaria that I'm gonna have to do some explaining about. But when we get to those, I got plenty to talk about. So let's start off with Alara. So Alara, these goblins, as you can see in the little picture right here, these goblins are very, appearance-wise, they kind of look just like Skaven, like little rat folk. Like they're little rodent goblin-looking dudes. I say goblin loosely. They're very rodent-like. They have tails, which tails on goblins is perfectly fine, but they basically just look like rats. Listen, I watched that 30-something minutes of him talking about goblins. I think I watched that 2 or 3 times, like getting ready for this, getting my thoughts together on all the different types of goblins. But, oh, hey, Undyne, welcome in. Thank you. Yes, so with Alara, yeah, so they look like little rat folks, like little Skaven. And essentially, right, the goblins on Alara, their whole deal, their whole deal is that they just fucking love to get eaten by dragons. That's all they do. They worship dragons. They sacrifice themselves to them, worship them. Like, it's all about all about dragons with them. They basically live like little tribal people and just worship and get eaten by dragons. That's all they do. And apparently they also get eaten by like pretty much everything on the plane. Like, from what I understand, almost every sentient species will hunt and eat the goblins on Alara. I don't know if they just tasty or dumb enough to be caught super easily, but yeah. So Alara goblins, honestly, we're starting off with on thin ice. Alara goblins, I'm not a fan of. They're just, when I see the little like rat folk that they have, right? I don't look at that and think goblin. I look at that and think, oh, that's like Skaven from Warhammer. You know? That and like their behavior, like, oof indeed. Their behavior, all they do is they just fanboy and worship over dragons, which is okay, I guess, but man, Alara goblins are on thin ice. They definite easy placement for me, just on thin ice. Get them out of here. Looking like a whole snack for everybody. They get eaten by everything. But yeah, so next we got Bablovia. So Bablovia is the plane that the Unset takes place on. I think the newest one, Unstable, I think that's the name of it. And that's where these goblins are from. You can see here they're very classic goblin look, like long pointy green ears, the long pointed green nose, classic goblin look. And their whole deal, all they do all day is they just make inventions that explode. Like this guy right here, you can see, has basically modified his body with a bunch of like saws and mechanical shit. Like, all they do is they just invent shit that explodes, cuts down things. They're like mad inventions. They're the mad scientists of goblins. They love blowing shit up, cutting shit down. They're super fun. And like in the Unset, a lot of the goblin cards, the like art on them is very nice. And in Bablovia, goblins are like they reproduce extremely quickly because they keep blowing everything up and themselves. Everything is blown up around them, and they all just keep fucking dying, so they just keep having to reproduce extremely quickly. So for me, Bablovia, the Unset goblins, Oh yeah, actually, I can just go ahead and pull up Scryfall and get some better images for these. Whoa. Scryfall. That can't be reached. What the fuck? There we go. So I can show you some of the goblins from here. So these are some of the goblins from the Unset. Like I said, classic, like green skin, long pointed green ears and long pointed noses. They also really love hammers. and just doing crazy shit all the time. I think, yeah, they make contraptions, they blow shit up. Old Buzzbark literally just made his hand into a giant, like, whirly blade. Very good goblins. Yeah, so Bablovia, I think, are part of the best gobos. They are a great example of just the, like, crazy, mad inventor side of it. Because goblins are, a lot of interpretations of goblins are like, artificers, but this one takes it takes it to the extreme with explosions, hammers, saws, wacky shit all the time. It's great. I love unstable goblins. They're so good. And then while I'm at it, let me go ahead and show you the Shards of Alara goblins. Yeah, these little, like, rat folk dudes. They love getting eaten, like I said earlier. They love just getting eaten by everything. So it's kind of, eh. Okay. So Bablovia, part of the best gobos. They are great. Love them. All right, so now we get to a weird one with Dominaria. So the weird thing about trying to rank Dominaria, right, is that Dominaria has taken place on... It has the most sets of, like, Magic that has taken place on, like, that plane more than any other plane by a long shot. I think it's like almost 30 planes or almost 30 sets that take place on Dominaria. There's at least 15 different subspecies of goblins here. Their appearance is extremely varied over just how big Dominaria is and how long of a time period we've been on Dominaria in Magic. Actually, I already have it pulled up here. So here's some examples of just all the different types of goblins in Dominaria. Like, all of these have taken place on Dominaria. So you have, like, some goblins that are, like, the more classic look. Yeah, no, the first 10 years of Magic took place on Dominaria. All of, like, every set. There are so many different goblins on Dominaria. It's so... I couldn't, like, narrow it down. At first, I was going to, like, try to separate them maybe by time periods or maybe just some notable ones, but there's just so many goblins. I will say some of the highlights are, like... you have Snow Goblin. You have a ski patrol. You have this guy who's reading intestines. And then where is the other one? This one is apparently my roommate's favorite goblin, by the way. Or one of his favorite goblin cards. Goblin War Buggy. He's just a little boy. You also have merfolk goblins. You got, like, giant, technically goblins, but they're more like orcs or ogres, just giant versions of them. There's just too many. You also got this one. I'm not gonna... He looks like he belongs in a BDSM dungeon. It's just so many goblins on this plane. So much... everything to cover. But saying that, I think it balances out to, like, Dominaria being a solid plane for gobos. Like, so there's some really good ones, and there's some kind of ones. So I think for me, it balances out to about in the middle. Like, pretty solid gobos. Yeah, Dominaria is just way too much to cover with going through each individual like subspecies, each different like point in time, but Dominaria I think balances out to solid gobos. Okay. After that we got Eldraine. And on Eldraine, the goblins are actually called redcaps. Because they're just covered in red fur that is apparently red because it is stained with the blood of their enemies. And they usually have gray or bluish skin. And they are not important at all on that set. Literally all they do is just raid. They just murder and raid. Like these 5 cards right here, that's literally all we have from Eldraine Goblins. They don't really do much in the story. They don't really have much of anything going on. Like I said, they basically just raid stuff and that's it. Yeah, mainly just chaos, raids, and the usual amount of murder is what I wrote down. Just, they're... I don't know. The red fur, I think, is kind of cool. I don't know about the red beard on this guy, though. Grumgully. But the red fur stained because of, like, how much murder they perform, that's alright. I think. I think Eldraine fits in the perfectly average. They just don't really do much, you know? Yeah, no, yeah, I like the red on them. It's just they just murder. That's it. That's all they do. They love murder. More so than the normal goblin, I think. Okay. So Eldraine, perfectly average. Next up, we got Fiora. So Fiora is the plane that the conspiracy sets take place on. And the goblins on Fiora, essentially their whole deal is that all the rest of the inhabitants of the plane are just super racist against the goblins on Fiora. Let's see. Conspiracy. Yeah, so they have a pretty decent amount of like different looks as well. I think the main look is going to be like Grinzo here, or this like Goblin Racketeer. Just kind of the, you know, green skin, pointed ears, kind of stocky build. And the main factor with them is that appearance-wise, their main standout is that they have a decent amount of, like, scraggly hair. Like, scraggly facial hair or beards, and then, you know, some hair on top of their head. Usually, like, a white color. Yeah, and on Fiora, their main deal is that they are basically just part of a big street gang. They're a big street gang that, you know, just controls like a certain part of the city. And some of them are like pretty decent artificers, but most of them just join the gang and then, you know, the Gobbo gang just cause chaos, raid shit, you know, the usual goblin chaos. But with Fiora, I think the Fioras are pretty solid. I do like the scraggly look on them. I like the scraggly look, and I like that they're part of a street gang, part of the Gobbo gang. The street gang, I don't know. I don't remember. I'd have I guess we'll get to it later with the rest of the planes. But I think Fiora is the only one where the goblins just straight up form like a gang and just take control of the thing. Oh wait, that's not true. They do it on Dominaria too. Cause who is it? There's like a legendary goblin on Dominaria that also forms a street gang. But Fiora goblins are pretty good. I like them. Pretty solid. All right, now we get to Ixalan, and Ixalan is a very interesting way to portray goblins. Let me go ahead and pull them up real quick. So, Ixalan goblins are just monkeys. They're straight up, they're just monkeys. Like, you look them in the face, like if you crop on just their face, looks, you know, you could be like, oh yeah, that's a goblin, right? But then you look at like this, that's just monkeys. Quote unquote interesting, right? Yeah. So the weird thing about it though, right, is that they're just monkeys. However, they're pirates. They're goblin pirates, and they're apparently huge pranksters, and they love getting on ships and running the cannons. They love explosions, pranks, and pirateering. So it's weird because look-wise, this is not a goblin. This is a monkey. Right? But behavior-wise, this is a fucking goblin right here. Blowing shit up, stealing stuff, pulling pranks. Like, so I get it. I get why they made the goblins monkeys on this plane. Because they wanted to have... They're like, oh, pirates. You know, we need, like, a real agile, like, creature to hop around on the, like, ships and climb up the masts and stuff. So I guess they just decided to make monkeys, and then they're like, we could make them goblins instead, you know, not classify them as monkeys. Right, yeah, that's the thing. They are so good. Behavior-wise is perfect. So good with the pirates goblins. Oh, it's so good. I love it. But they're just monkeys. If they had made the design, I don't know, more something different with the design to where it looks more goblin-like. I don't know. Like I said, with some of the cards, if you look at just the face, you could be like, that's a goblin. But you zoom out, you show somebody a picture of this and ask what creature type that is, they're gonna say monkey or like ape or whatever. Ain't no way they're guessing goblin. So if we were to go off of just the lore and behavior of them, I'd give them the best goblins, top of the pack. However, the monkeys, they're not goblins, they're monkeys. So I'm not 100% sure where to put them. I don't think they go on thin ice, but they're not almost perfect. The monkey aspect is just too much. For right now, I'll put them in solid, and I might go back and readjust. But they're just monkeys. They're just monkeys. That's it. They just love monkeying around, climbing shit and stealing stuff. That's it. Okay. Next up is Kamigawa. All right, so Kamigawa has nope, not these. Let me get that pulled up. So Kamigawa is a pretty good interpretation of goblins. Um, Essentially, the goblins on this plane are known as Aki. That's what their species is called, and they're little like red spiky boys. They have like a turtle shell on the back, and they are very like rugged, rough looking. Um, so they actually just revisited Kamigawa recently, and let's see, yeah, red to brownish in color, long pointed noses, claw-like finger and toes, a turtle shell on the back. Apparently, they're based on like Kappa and like Japanese mythology. They're supposed to be kind of Kappa looking ish with like the turtle shell. And behavior wise, in the old sets, like in the older version of Kamigawa, they're basically just mountain dwellers that are extremely territorial and really, really, really like fire. They fucking love fire. Which is pretty cool. I like that. They're very like tribal. They have their own like patron that they worship. They're huge into like shamans and stuff like that. And then whenever they revisited Kamigawa in the new one, they're mainly samurais and inventors and blacksmiths. So they still work with fire. Yeah, right. Look wise, it's the Kappa thing, right? Where they live, not so much. Yeah. Um, but yeah, in the new one, they're very like they took on the artificer thing a lot more, like with being blacksmiths or inventors, and also samurai, which is fucking sick. A goblin samurai, like yo. um, so it's a very different take on goblins, but I like it pretty good. Um, Although I will say I look at like the art on these cards, and if I didn't know the creature type, I probably would not guess goblin. Or at least not like my first guess would be goblin. But I do like it. Tribal, fire loving, all that good shit. So Kamigawa I think also gets a solid, like both the old and the new versions of the goblins on that plane. Pretty good. I like. Very nice. um, Also fitting for it to be right next to Ixalan, one of the like out there takes of goblins. All right, next up we got Kylem. Kylem is I forgot about this plane. Because it was just in one set that wasn't even like a mainline set. It was like a supplemental like summer set that they came out with. So Kylem, the goblins on this plane, right? So first of all, about Kylem, right? The whole deal with that plane is that they basically just have a big like battle arena that they do all the time, and they love like arena games and battles and all that stuff, right? Goblins on this plane, first of all, look wise, I mean, classic goblin, just big pointed ears, it looks like a goblin. But their whole deal on this plane is that they're just huge blood sport fanboys. Like apparently they make up a majority of the crowd, will also like sell shit as vendors, but like 90% of the goblins are just huge fanboys that just get in the crowd and cheer on whoever they're rooting for and just go fucking ballistic. I don't remember the name of the card, but there's one card that shows goblins, like a whole like section of the stands filled with goblins, and all of them like ringing like cowbells, essentially, like cheering. They're huge fanboys for the blood sport. Which, if you're gonna make a plane where the main thing is a battle, like battle arena themed, like most of it's one-on-one combat, the goblins wouldn't be super great at one-on-one combat, but they'd make fucking hella fanboys. What was it? The Team Yell from the new or from the Sword and Shield Pokemon game. They're essentially that. They just run around causing chaos and fanboying over whoever they want to cheer for. So there's not many of these goblins. There's not much more about them. But I really like that interpretation of goblins. Just having them be like raving mad fanboys is so funny. I love the idea of them just getting up in the stands and fucking going ballistic whenever they're like whoever they're cheering on like wins their fight. Kylum is definitely a fun interpretation of goblins. It's really, really good. Okay. So now we get to... Okay, so this one I had to split up. So the name of the plane, right, is Lorwyn. However, there is an event that happens in the story there that completely warps it to where the plane transforms into a different one called Shadowmoor, and everything on the plane changes. But I'll show you Lorwyn first. We'll go with that. So Lorwyn goblins, right? Lorwyn goblins are known as Bogarts. That's what their species name is. And Lorwyn goblins, I read it, apparently no two goblins on Lorwyn look the same. They're all completely unique looking. Some have like horns on them, some are red, some are blue, gray, all colors of the fucking rainbow. You got ones that look you got ones that look dopey. You got ones that honestly he looks more like a little ogre, but they're just extremely varied in their looks. They just also you get this art, which I fucking hate, Spiderwig Bogart. But they are just all, yeah, a real rainbow of gobos. And so on the plane, what they do is they are a bunch of pride gobos. You could probably find one of each color of the pride flag on here. So the gobos on this plane, behavior wise, huge pranksters. The other inhabitants on this plane are like fairies and other type of stuff like that, and they just love pulling pranks and fucking with the other ones, not killing them, not raiding them, just pulling pranks and fucking with them, right? Yeah, Kithkin, that's the name of it. Kithkins are the other another species on this plane, basically hobbits. And they just love fucking with them and pulling pranks. Let's see, they do that. They live in like loose clans where the clans are like matriarchal. They're matriarchal, and the head goblin of each clan is called the auntie. So they all report to their auntie. Goblin albums. Ooh. Let's see. And the other thing with them is that they all... Let's see. Where is it at? You can kind of... see it here. Or this is a good example of it. The other behavioral thing that they do is that The goblins on this plane seek out new senses. So, like new tastes, smells, feelings, sounds, all of it. They will, they basically just run around trying out new shit, and then they will bring that back to their clan and share it with everybody. And if you don't share it, if you, keep it to yourself, you get exiled. So they're just a bunch of pranksters that look super cool and just run around trying out new shit and sharing it with their friends and family. Lorwyn is the best gobos. Oh, I love Lorwyn gobos. Oh my gosh. Lorwyn gobos is so much fun. Oh, I love them so much. Just so good. So good. But the opposite side of that is that whenever it got transformed into Shadowmoor, they took a very different change. So whenever it transformed into Shadowmoor, it split up from just Bogarts to Bogarts, Redcaps, Spriggans, Hobgoblins, and Streamhoppers. So now you have 5 different like subspecies of goblins, and you can see here like the Redcaps look. Ugh. You got the Streamhoppers, which just look like aquatic-ish goblins with one leg. Spriggans, which grow really big. Bogarts, which just like to eat everything. Murder and eat everything. And then Hobgoblins, which are essentially just pissed off hobbits. Most of these goblins, besides the Hobgoblins, are just very aggressive and like to kill and eat anything they can get their hands on. Which I mean, it's fine. It's the, the more like aggressive kind of side of goblins, but I don't know, for me, just Shadowmoor, I just think they're perfectly average. Like, look-wise, they're still pretty cool, but like behavior-wise, it's just a big step down. They went from, perfect gobos to like, it's okay. Yeah. No, listen, they did the Raid Mother, Wart the Raid Mother, they did her dirty. Look, she was having a good time with her kids, smiling. And then you get this. It's yeah, Wart did not do well transforming from Lorwyn to Shadowmoor. Yeah, Shadowmoor, it's fine. It's not bad at all. It's just Shadowmoor goblins are kind of it's for me, it's whatever. It's not the best, not the worst. So perfectly average. Next up, you got Mercadia. Where did the Mercadia set take place again? I forgot. No, that was Dominaria. Mercadia. The goblins on Mercadia, I'll go ahead and tell you this, though. They don't look great. The goblins on Mercadia are very... I think Nemesis takes place? No, Nemesis does not. The goblins on... There we go, Mercadian masks, yeah. They just... I'm not digging the look. If you change that skin color to like not green, right? That's not a goblin. That's just like a pissed off elf. Or like a pissed off some like to me, appearance wise, these guys don't look like goblin. That's not the face of a goblin. That's the face of a fucking elf. Exactly, almost elfish. Like very much more human elf looking than other goblins we've seen. Yeah, taller, slimmer, more human elf like. And essentially what they do on this plane is they took over the plane as the ruling class. So the goblins on this plane are actually the top dogs. Um, but they basically just act like the bourgeoisie, like a dirty bourgeoisie. Like snobby rich folk that, you know, just act shitty. Um I just I don't know. They just don't do it for me. They're just something about this lanky figure, right? Which you can have lanky with a goblin, but that with looking like it, and then they're basically, you know, the ruling class, but kind of goblin-y, but not really. Mercadia gets on thin ice. I'm I'm not a huge fan of the Mercadian goblins. Not not good. Not very good. Yeah, you could have bougie goblins. Oh, what's hold on. I can show you a good example of a bougie goblin. Get Duretti up here. So Duretti, he's from I think it's he's from Fiora, right? He basically rose through the ranks as an artificer, overcame, like the whole plane being racist against goblins, and became like a top student at like their best university for artificy. Artificy? I don't know. But he's a kind of bougie, right? Like you can do bougie goblins, but Mercadian just ain't it. The Mercadian goblins just ain't it. That is not how you do bougie. At least I don't think so. Ugh. All right. Next up, we got Mirrodin. I did have to separate Mirrodin old and new. Because you have Mirrodin pre-Phyrexians and Mirrodin post-Phyrexians, right? The Mirrodin goblins pre-Phyrexian do I already have it pulled up? I don't think so. No. The Mirrodin, or the goblins on Mirrodin pre-Phyrexian oh, there's no goblins on original Mirrodin? Weird. Well, here, I can zoom in here so you can see it. The goblins on Mirrodin pre-Phyrexian are basically just look like regular goblins, except they have metal naturally growing out of them, like metal pokey bits, right? Because the whole Mirrodin plane is metal. They basically just spend all their time sacrificing artifacts to their form of god, which is just the sun. But they fucking love it, so they they basically just spend all their time taking apart artifacts and sacrificing and like blowing them up in the name of the sun, the mighty sun. And I kind of like the Robo Goblins. Not like a huge amount, like the robot looking bits on them, but it's all right. I think Mirrodin, the old Mirrodin goblins get like a solid gobbo. They just basically run around blowing shit up and destroying stuff in the name of the mighty sun. um, pretty, pretty solid gobos right there. And then you get to Mirrodin, the new one, which is like when the Phyrexians come to Mirrodin, and it shows a little bit afterwards as well. Let's see if I can get this pulled up because they have a very interesting look. I think it's Guards and Mirrodin Besieged. Oh, because I'm searching for Duretti. No, I don't want to search for Duretti anymore. Okay, so the goblins on newer Mirrodin have a very different look, right? Like short, stocky bodies with that huge mouth with fangs, and like the reddish color. I honestly really like the look of these goblins. I dig the like huge mouths and like reddish skin with the pointed ears. I think it looks pretty good. And then like behavior wise, they basically do the same thing. They basically do the same thing as the old Mirrodin goblins, of blowing up artifacts, sacrificing in the name of the sun, and just, causing general chaos. And then when the Phyrexians came, you can see on this card, the Phyrexians basically infected a lot of the goblins and made it to where they just ran around trying to spread like the Phyrexian plague as much as they could. So they still look the same. Their behavior just changed from blow up shit in the name of the sun to bite other species in the name of the Phyrexians. So these ones I think are pretty good. General goblin chaos mixed with a pretty unique look. I like it. I would give Mirrodin goblins an almost perfect. I'm not sure exactly how to improve on them. Maybe something with the behavior, or maybe, change that up a bit. But Mirrodin goblins, the newer version, I really like. Really cool gobos. Okay, next we got Wrath. The goblins of Wrath are referred to as Mogs, and they are very, very, very ugly. Let's see if I can find a good one. I can just type in Mog and it should come up. So these guys are, green, very bumpy looking. Very bumpy skin. Usually green color. Yeah, I think there's a couple that are also like this reddish, but they have some nasty looking boys. Mog squad. But the thing with the Mogs is that they were basically bred to be war dogs. I couldn't find exactly which on the Plane of Wrath, which, whoever it was that was in control of the goblins. But basically there was a upper class that took control of them and just bred them to fight and use them as war dogs. And apparently they can just innately detect magic. So they would just use them to track down mages and rip them to shreds. Oh, and these are canonically the stupidest goblins that have ever existed in Magic. These are the dumbest ones by far, apparently. Yeah, they're definitely here. I don't really know what more to say on them. They're just bumpy murder boys. uh, I don't think they're on thin ice. I would give them an average. Like, they're not horrible, right? It's just look wise, they definitely went with the a more feral take on goblins. And behavior wise, I mean, it makes sense. You're gonna have some planes in Magic, or in like any fantasy setting where like a race like goblins, where they're most of the time very aggressive and reproduce very quickly, makes sense that they're going to be used as like war dogs in some setting. So it makes sense. Design is all right. They're, it's okay. It's average, perfectly average Gobbo. Yeah, not really much more to say on the Mogs. I do like the names though, and there's a lot of iconic cards in Magic that are Mog goblins, but just kind of they're average. All right, next up we got Ravnica. Ravnica is a good set for goblins. Where are they at? I know I have it pulled up here. So Ravnica, you got Ravnica in the. You got 4 main factions of goblins on there. You got Boros goblins, which you can see here are basically recruits. They're basically like soldiers. Although apparently in the Boros Legion, they're basically treated like dogs as well. You got... excuse me. You got the Gruul goblins, which are either shamans or they rampage. Like, they just go about causing a ruckus. There's a really good Gruul one that's pretty recent. Yeah, Zerta Goblin. They're just rampagers that go around within the Gruul clan. They just run around beating people up and destroying stuff. You got the Gruul, or I already said the Gruul. You got the Izzet Goblins, which are like wizards and mainly test subjects, but you got some that are wizards or like electromancers, the more sciencey mad wizard type of goblins. And then finally you got the Rakdos goblins, which are spiky murder jesters. They're part of a fucking like traveling circus. They just go around murdering people in the name of their circus. It's great. It's so good. They just put on shows where they kill people and like, do wacky tricks. It's so good. I here's another fucking Rakdos goblin who has no arms because he's replaced them with murder weapons. Rakdos goblins are great. I love Rakdos goblins. They're so good. Yeah, for the Rakdos, suicidal charge and good showmanship are one and the same. Rakdos goblins are so fucking good. Oh my god. Spiky murder jesters. It's so good. And like you can see, like appearance wise, they're kind of all over the place. I think mainly they're like the classic goblin look with like red or green skin. And then you have some weird ones like this where it's more humanoid. But most of them are, pretty goblin looking. And most of them have pretty good rolls. The only issue that I have with Ravnican goblins, right? The only issue that I have is Gobos being in the Boros Legion. So you can have military goblins. Most of the planes have like goblins in some type of military thing or in like some type of like group or whatever. The only issue is that the Boros are very like militaristic, like rank and file. Like you have to stay in your place and follow specific orders from your commander that you're given, right? So Gabos being in Boros, like I think this one's technically Boros Goblin as well, the war boss. Like I personally don't think they fit in the Boros guild. Apparently the ones there, like I said, more are used like war dogs, but still they're expected to fall in line and follow orders, and that's not what goblins do. So I really like Ravnica goblins. I do, but I think they're almost perfect. If it just wasn't for the Boros goblins, they'd be part of the best. Or maybe even if they had them in Boros, but said like the Boros basically just kept them around to use as like berserkers when things get really bad. I don't know, just something different. But man, the fucking jester clowns, oh, so good. Ravnica is a really, really good plane for goblins, I will say, though. Okay, so next up, we got Tarkir. On Tarkir, you got two types of goblins. Let me see if I can get them pulled up here. Goblin in Tarkir. You basically have two different types of goblins on Tarkir. They are in Dragons of Tarkir. Let's see. Yeah, so you got this type of goblin, which is interesting. You got there. This type of goblin is known as Teamer goblins, and they're basically albino Furbies that live in the snow. They just run around trying to find shit to eat. They don't really do much else. They just live in the snow, run around, and, kill stuff to eat. Something about the look, man. I don't know. Again, another interesting way to display goblins. But so you got the Teamer goblins, and then you also have the other type of goblins on this plane, which is, I think these are the Mardu? Yeah, Mardu goblins. They look like red/brown colored Furbies that run around, and these guys actually live like with some of the like human clans and stuff, and they pretty much just get ignored by everybody, but they'll stick with the clan and then run around and help them fight. So these ones have a little bit more going on, but I don't know, it's kind of weird. I don't know, the Tarkir goblins are to me definitely strange looking. Oh, and then on Tarkir there's like a whole time thing that happens, kind of like with Lorwyn, where it transforms it, and after it gets transformed, they basically become dragon worshippers. Not all of them, but I think a good chunk of them become dragon worshippers after like the whole like time fuckery on Tarkir. So Tarkir, I think, just gets an average. It's all right. It's okay. It's not bad. It's just kind of whatever. Definitely not the worst type of goblins that I've seen, but not the best either. And then up last, we got Zendikar. Zendikar is pretty good. Dragon worshipping should not... Yeah. I don't really think so either. Apparently somebody at Wizards of the Coast thinks that though, because they've had Tarkir goblins be dragon worshippers, Alara goblins were dragon worshippers. Um, there's been some other set, or there's been not some other sets. There's been some other examples of goblins being like, under dragons. I don't think that should really be a thing, but apparently somebody does. um, so next up we got Zendikar. Zendikar goblins are pretty different depending on the time period. So I actually have them separated. So let me pull up one of the older goblins. So yeah, right here, these three right here are a good example. So the older dragon or the older goblins on Zendikar, pretty classic goblin look, like greenish skin or reddish skin with long pointed ears and shit. And on Zendikar, they are mainly like you have the usual raiders and stuff like that, but mainly the goblins here are traders, like guides to get you through the mountains, because Zendikar is mainly mountains and wild landscapes. So you have like traders, guides, you have like beast masters that like catch stuff. Yeah, like this guy will catch stuff and like tame bugs and other critters. So Zendikar is just, the older goblins are pretty decent. I think they're pretty solid. Yeah, I think they go in the solid gobos. They're very, they're pretty good. I like them. But the newer goblins for Zendikar, so apparently after, hold on, let me find the one that I really like. Well, that works. So the goblins on Zendikar after the Eldrazi came, basically had, I don't know why, I didn't find the lore reason why, but they changed their diets to like a certain thing called like grit or grist or something like that, and they were fucking rock goblins. They're very they're basically covered in stone skin. They're very rocky looking, and I fucking love it. Where is it? Hold on, it's one of the other Zendikar sets. I think it's in Eldrazi Rising. They basically get like a layer of rock that covers their skin. Maybe it's not in here. I don't know. Oh well. They get like a rocky appearance, and they do the normal stuff of raiding, guiding, and all that stuff that I mentioned before. But in addition to that, they also essentially become vault hunters. Like there's a good amount of them that just will try to find like buried treasure and stuff left behind, and will basically become vault hunters. They just try to track down the treasure and get it. What is the name of this one? This one, the art that I have on the tier list is the version of that goblin that I really like, but I can't remember which set it's from. Battle for Zendikar. Is it Oath of the Gatewatch, maybe? Yeah, Goblin Freerunner. So they get like more of a body type that's good for like climbing in mountains, and they get rocky. Oh, it's definitely a weird one, but I really like it. I personally, the new Zendikar goblins, I think are fucking great. Hey, thanks for the follow. Oh shit, Trans Queen Assault. How's it going? Yeah, no, the Zendikar goblins I think are just great. You also got a version of them that technically live underground, and they like have no eyes. What you call gay? I've seen some of your streams with Chi. But yeah, Zendikar goblins, great. I like Zendikar goblins a lot. It is definitely a weird one to have them be like rock goblins, but I think they do a solid job with it. Even the old Zendikar ones are good. I just prefer the appearance of the newer ones. But yeah, so I think this right here is the official, uncontested tier list for goblins and magic. You got the best gobos up here with Lorwyn and Bablovia, all in between, and then you got these guys. We don't talk about these goblins. They're technically around, but so I think that is a good, solid tier list. I think, yeah, with each of these, there's probably